Welcome to What AI Means, the podcast that asks scholars and creators about the significance of artificial intelligence for the world as they see it through the lenses of their disciplines and expertise. I'm Lee Spector, a professor of computer science at Amherst College, and today we'll be hearing from Andrew Dole, who is the Emily C. Jordan Folger Professor of Religion and the Department Chair of Religion at Amherst College. Andrew Dole, welcome to What AI Means. Before we talk about AI, could you introduce yourself and tell us about the focus of your work?
Sure. I'm Andrew Dole. I've been teaching here at Amherst College for a little over 20 years. I was trained in philosophy of religion, and I teach a mix of things that ranges over the area, the domain that's called modern Western religious thought. So I teach some material in the philosophy of religion. I teach some courses that are Christian intellectual history, probably, and I teach some one-off things in areas that I'm interested in, like religion and conspiracy theories, the cognitive science of religion, quasi-religious movements, things of that nature. So I range fairly broadly.
Today's AI may change how religion is studied or taught, but I'm interested in hearing your thoughts instead about what I think is a more fundamental question about what religion is. So, from the perspective you've just described, as a scholar of religion and the philosophy of religion, what do you think that the kind of AI that we're beginning to see may mean regarding the nature of religion?
So there are some things that are visible now, and a tremendous amount that I think is going on that is not yet visible. There's an old saying that historians are fond of, that if you take the trend lines that are visible now and you project them straight out, you're sure to get things wrong, because something surprising always happens. And at any given time, there's always things going on that you're not aware of. The trend lines don't actually tell the whole story of what's going on right now. So I want to hedge my answers a little bit by saying I can project straight out from some of the trend lines that I see now, and I think that's important to do, but I'm sure that there will be surprises. I'm sure that there are things that are happening now that I don't know, and those will end up meaning a lot. Those will end up mattering a lot. So a big question hangs over this whole issue for me, or a big question hangs over the whole question to me, I think, which is the question, is AI actually still going to be around in the future, or is it just going to go away? Everybody in the AI space is losing money, with the exception of people who are selling GPUs. And I think there are people out there who are saying that nobody in the AI industry sees a path to profitability. I don't know if those people are right or not. That's not my area of expertise. But if you just sort of projected those trend lines out straight, if nobody manages to invent a way for AI to make huge amounts of money, because it takes huge amounts of money to run these things, then it's just not going to be around. Or it's only going to be around in a form that is accessible to people who are willing to pay huge amounts of money for it. Now, this wouldn't be a very interesting podcast if I said, I think that's what's going to happen, is that it's just going to go away. So let's just assume, for the sake of argument, that one way or another, the AI industry is going to stabilize and remain around in such a way that ordinary people can have access to the best AI tools without paying a lot of money for them. Let's assume that. That's the scenario that is interesting to talk about, but I don't know if that's the scenario that's actually going to come to pass.
So if that happens, and let's suppose that it is available and affordable, and let's also suppose that it gets better, that it is everything that the AI optimists claim in terms of its capabilities. And there's a lot of ifs there. But supposing all of those things, based on your understanding of how religion works, what would you see would the impacts be for religion?
So there are some things that are visible now about the way AI is being made available in religious spaces. And that's the thing that is clearest, is that there are tons of people who are making AI available for use by religious people and within the context of religious organizations. We don't yet, or at least I don't yet, have really good data about the uptake of these tools that are available, about how they are in fact being used and the effects that they are having. But I can start by talking about what is visible, what's out there now. The thing that is the most visible in the spaces that I pay attention to, which is mostly Christian traditions that are networked, is a proliferation of AI chatbots that are dedicated to religious themes, that are advertised as giving religious advice. And specifically, since my interest is primarily in Christianity, what I have seen, what's caught my attention, is a proliferation of AI chatbots that say that they will give you answers from the Bible. So lots of people have Bibles on their bookshelves, and lots of Christians, many Protestant Christians, understand that what Christianity is, or what the kind of Christianity that they practice is supposed to sort of take its instructions from the Bible. So the Bible is the place that you go to if you have a question about whether something is okay or something is good or bad. But the Bible itself is a big book, and it's kind of hard to understand, and where do you look in the Bible? So a lot of companies have now produced chatbots that are such that you can ask a question and get an answer from the Bible. There are lots of these. They're out there. My anticipation is that people are going to make pretty heavy use of these things. I would not be at all surprised to learn that lots of people are actually using these things to get answers from the Bible. Now, this could have a number of different effects. It could increase the frequency with which people actually try to get biblical answers to questions they have, because it will make it tremendously easy to do that. It may decrease the engagement that religious people have with other humans around issues of biblical interpretation, because the go-to method for answering questions about biblical interpretation up to now, if you open the Bible and you just find it really hard to get the answers that you want, has been to go to another human, either a living, breathing human, or a book or something like that has been created by a human. If you have an AI chatbot that will do that kind of work for you really, really easily, then I imagine people making less use of other people in getting answers to these questions. So those are two kinds of effects that I see that we're very likely to see if these AI chatbots remain available. Now, you ask this question about what if they get a lot better. Now, I have a sense of what it would mean for AI chatbots to get better when it comes to giving answers to religious questions. But let me ask you to say something about what it would be for AI to get better in a generic way, so that I can make sure that we're talking about the same thing.
Fair enough. I guess better in this case might be to be able to give the kind of interactions that the person to whom you would go in pre-AI times would give. So if you were going to your minister or your rabbi and you had a question, could they be as aware of your circumstance? Could they be as sensitive to the kind of advice that the tradition suggests? Could they, whatever qualities make somebody good at that? Suppose the AI systems get as good or better than the best people in the field.
Okay, that's an interesting framing. That's a very interesting framing. Here's something that I don't see AI guides getting very good at. So let's take Protestant Christians for example. Before AI, if Protestant Christians had questions about the Bible that they had difficulty resolving on their own, one of the things that they might do, there's two obvious places they might go. They might go to a religious professional, a pastor, or they might go to a group setting like a Bible study and try to work these answers out with other people. Now, to take the second one first, in a Bible study, people are bringing all of their different stories into conversation with what they read in the Bible. And a lot of what happens in a Bible study is that people work out as a group some extent of a shared sense of the bearing of particular biblical materials on their situations. And they do this by not only just reading the Bible, but also by talking about their situations. And AI is not going to have its own experiences to share. And I can't imagine a way in which an AI can replicate the dynamic of working in a group context like that. And the fact that people do this not individually, but and not one-on-one, but in the context of a group, that's actually a really fundamental dynamic of religious interaction. It hasn't occurred to me to think about ways in which artificial intelligence technology could replicate or replace that. I don't currently see a way that it can do that. Replicating or supplanting a one-on-one conversation with a pastor, that is a little bit more plausible because, structurally the interaction is more similar. It's a conversation. People do, exchange text messages with their pastors, but that's not the gold standard. The gold standard is actual, verbal interchange. And you can have verbal interchanges with AIs. But the thing about a pastor is that a pastor will almost always know something about your life circumstances and will know you as an individual. And if you have a burning question of biblical interpretation that you bring to your pastor, there's probably going to be some circumstance in your life, or maybe in the life of somebody else, that's behind it. And in a pastoral conversation, a really interesting question is going to be, well, what's at stake here? And in pastoral conversations can go in completely different directions. Like a person can come in with this one question, but it turns out that what's eating them actually doesn't have anything to do with that question. It's something else. And with it's through one-on-one exchange with the pastor that result is achieved. For an AI, for large language models to replicate that kind of interaction, that's going to require significant improvements in, AI memory. And it's also going to involve AIs having access to a tremendous amount of data. And then, of course, there's the whole question about whether AIs can have empathy. As far as I know, memory is something that AI groups are working on. I don't think that anybody has a plan for making chatbots empathetic. I think if you understand how LLMs work, that's just kind of an irrelevant question. There's a good question of how they could be made to simulate empathy, but that's different, right? And then in terms of AI chatbots having access to, the kind of information that a pastor is going to have about a person that would be relevant in pastoral conversations, I'm sure that there are people that would not object to, the companies that run LLMs having all of that information about them. But I think there are a lot of people who would not be comfortable with that.
Interesting. One thought that your comments triggered for me was the social nature of religious institutions and the thought that the ways that they function as parts of communities, binding communities together, and so on, may be an essential part of the way religion works. And so, even if the AIs do not get much better, and even if they cannot empathize and so forth, I wonder if you think that people being able to turn to computational pastors may really change the way that religion works because of the way it changes the social structures around it.
Yeah, I think that's quite likely to happen. We have earlier examples of this. As technologies have come along and religious groups have embraced them, the religious application of new technologies has really opened up new ways of being religious, of doing the religion thing. So televangelism, for example, is the example that comes most readily to mind. There is now a form of religious engagement that consists of sitting in front of a screen and watching a program and not participating in the program, not being in the presence of other human beings, and not participating in the give and take of religious community, but just absorbing something that is transmitted to you, and you can be completely, isolated from other human beings in three dimensions, while participating religiously in this way. And that's new. That hasn't been possible before. So it's certainly very plausible to think that interaction with AI chatbots could become a form of religious practice that has never existed before. A big question, I think, in all of this is how widespread is trust in AI chatbots going to be on religious matters? I think there is a tremendous amount of awareness of how fallible AI chatbots are. It's very clear that awareness of that kind of fallibility doesn't matter to everybody, that there are people who are putting their lives in the hands of AI chatbots by asking them for, advice about, counseling issues and relationship questions and things like that. So I do think that we will see, I'm actually pretty confident that this is happening already, that there are people who are engaging with AI chatbots as a form of religious practice and are doing so with great seriousness. I'm sure that this is true. I couldn't tell you how widespread that is or what its future is. I think we need good data on that.
Thank you. I know that you have interests in the evolutionary psychology and cognitive science of religion. Does your work in these areas suggest anything specific, either about how AI may transform religion or how religion may influence the development and adoption of AI?
Yeah, I've got some thoughts in that area. One of the staples of research in the cognitive science of religion, which predates that field by centuries, is the idea that human beings have a tendency to anthropomorphize things in their environment. This goes all the way back to at least David Hume. So human beings have a tendency to start treating things in the world that are not agents as agents. And in some cases, this is reflective. In some cases, this is explicit. Like, I think there's a spirit in that, in the bush over there, or I think the mountain is, intelligent, or things like that. In other cases, it's implicit. Like you can just have feelings of anger towards an institution because you feel like the institution is mean or dishonest or something like that. Those are the kinds of thoughts that it's appropriate to have about agents, but we just find ourselves having those kinds of thoughts and feelings about things that are not agents. So people are going to regard AIs as agents, large language models as agents, either implicitly or explicitly. That will actually happen. In some cases, it will be intentional and reflective. And in other cases, people will just find themselves unable to avoid thinking of AIs as agents. Of course, this opens up all kinds of possibilities for the way that people are going to interact with AI agents. Are some people going to regard AIs as supernatural agents in the sense that the cognitive science of religion likes to talk about, where supernatural, functionally, what a supernatural agent, what that language means is capable of doing things that ordinary humans can't do. And so a potential source of assistance with life's problems that ordinary humans can't offer. Certainly some people will attribute to large language models superhuman levels of intelligence, wisdom, knowledgeability, things of that nature. That will happen. That will certainly happen. And it does seem to be happening already. It does seem as though there are instances in which persons have come to trust AIs with super important questions that they don't trust any human beings to answer. I don't know how widespread that's going to be. I do think that within the context of established religious communities, that kind of treatment of AIs is unlikely to be favored. I think most established religious communities are going to caution people against divinizing large language models. It's an interesting question whether any religious community is going to try to build its business model around the divinization of large language models. I expect we will see some communities trying to do that. I don't know whether those kinds of experiments can possibly be successful, but especially in the United States, we have this thing called the religious marketplace, where you can kind of try anything in the space of religion, and maybe it'll succeed if you get significant numbers of people to buy into it. So I imagine that we will be seeing people basically developing forms of religion that divinize AIs, and I don't know what kind of traction they're going to get. I imagine they'll get some. Don't know where it's going to go.
Interesting. Finally, what questions do you think we should all be asking about AI moving forward?
So the main question that I think we should all be asking is, how do I keep AI from just invading absolutely everything that I touch? How can I know where AI is and where AI is not? In my capacity as a college professor, I see AI just progressively invading different areas of my professional life, and I don't like it. I have colleagues who like it in some areas, but I don't know that anybody should be happy with the idea that AI is going to be there in the mix everywhere, and we're not going to know where it is and where it ain't. For me, it's very important. I want to use the term analog, which is completely inappropriate because I'm talking about typing on my computer. I want to be able to live an analog digital life. I want to be able to type my own words and verbalize my own thoughts. And I want to be received as, I want to be read and listened to as someone who is communicating with my own words and my own thoughts. And I don't want AI to be in the mix of what I do in ways that I'm not aware of and can't control.
Thank you. Andrew Dole, thank you so much for joining us on What AI Means. What AI Means is a production of Artificial Intelligence in the Liberal Arts at Amherst College. For more information, see liberal-arts.ai.